Hello everyone, my name is Pixlriffs and welcome back to the Minecraft Survival Guide. I hope you guys are having a good day. Today we're going to do a bit of building. Today we're going to find a new area to build as well, because I have decided that I'm going to make an area on this world that is dedicated to my new tutorial series, Minecraft Microbuilds. If you didn't check that out yesterday or the day before, the first episode went up Saturday of this last week, and I'm really happy with it. Minecraft Microbuilds is a series where I am planning to build in these kind of 8x8 plot areas, mainly so that I can have some stuff to build in Minecraft Earth, but also so that I can create some little builds that will be perfect for things like small plot worlds or just little spaces you want to squeeze in a build in your survival world. And I have a few places that are like that around here in Founder's Forge. In fact, there are a couple of places that could really do with buildings like this here and there, where you don't have a huge amount of space in a city, but you really want to build that kind of stands out from all of the others. So I figure we could probably build one or two of them around here, but I do want to go a little bit further afield and start what's effectively going to be an area of the survival guide world that I can showcase these Minecraft micro builds. And so we're going to go on a bit of a journey. I have a feeling that where I want to do this is kind of over by the ink farm. That we have a village over there already that we've kind of not been to for a while. I've been to the ink farm recently to AFK for some more ink, but that is really the only time I have spent over there. And the main reason I want to build something over there is because it's a nice flat plains area. We've got lots of space where we can go and build, but also it has a nether portal there already, so I don't have to worry about establishing another connection to my nether hub. I can basically just go there whenever I want to. Despite that, of course, I am flying there right now because I want to get familiar with where it is again. I think it's over this mountain range in this direction. Once we come down on the other side after the tiger, we should hopefully discover, yes, this plains area, and then over here somewhere we should find the village. Yeah, here we go. Took a little bit of flying around, but we found it. Once I found the dried out riverbed by the ink farm, I was pretty certain that we would find it pretty easily. So yeah, around here is where we're going to start the Minecraft Microbuilds town. And it's clear that I've been doing a little bit of tree farming here already, but we have a nice open section of the plains adjacent to the village just around here where we can start a little area of these 8x8 plot builds. So I'm excited to get started with this. I have a shulker box here that contains all the materials that we will need for the build. It's actually very, very small in terms of material cost. We could do a little bit of stuff with the materials we have around here to get the interior built, which is something that I did not do in the tutorial, and I kind of like having these small kind of like shulker box sized builds that we can build, and I think a lot of the builds in an 8x8 area are going to be this size, so it's not very resource intensive. A full material list is given with the tutorial itself, so if you want that, then go ahead and check out the video there. It's in the comments, it's in the video itself as well. And I brought absolutely everything I need, plus a few extra materials just in case I drop a couple of things like items despawn on the ground if I break a block or something like that. Always best to have a few extra materials. But I think we're just going to go out to roughly the center of this plains over here, give or take this lava lake, and I think, yeah, maybe around here, around this area here is where we're going to start our Minecraft Microbuilds town. Can flatten out a little bit of the area, grab some grass blocks, clear out some of the grass that's already here, and we can put that back in later if we want to. Let's get our shulker box down and let's get to building. Now, I'm not going to go through the building process of this step by step because it is something that obviously I go through step by step in the tutorial video. What I want to do instead is kind of tee up the subject of this video, because this video isn't just going to be about building stuff like this. We're actually going to take a look at structure blocks, and this is one of the first videos I'm doing that is kind of outside of the purview of normal survival stuff, because the structure blocks aren't really something that players use in survival all that much. I think I built that one block too far over. That should be right. So structure blocks are basically highly specialized command blocks, which is not exactly what they are, I suppose, but it's close enough. Basically what they allow you to do is copy and paste builds in your Minecraft world, and it doesn't have to just be a build. It can be a section of terrain, it can be a tree or something. It can be basically anything that you want to repeat in your Minecraft world, up to a 32 by 32 by 32 block area. So a quite sizable cube of your Minecraft world can be shifted around and moved and replaced and rotated using structure blocks. And these can be especially useful if you want to fill up a large area with a city build, but you don't want to build the same thing over and over again. And it's not something I expect I will do all that often here in the survival guide world, but I expect it might be useful to some of you who want to do stuff like map making and feel like doing some of that in survival and some of it using the more creative tools that are available to you. And I may as well address this here because I get new viewers quite frequently, and some of them have noticed when they first start watching the series that in some of the early episodes, I show the login screen and it says cheats are enabled for this world, and they wonder why I'm doing that and if I'm cheating in resources behind the scenes and that my survival guide world is not legit or whatever. Believe me, I do all of the building in this series in survival mode. The reason I have cheats enabled in the first place is so that I can demonstrate stuff like this, so that when it comes to demonstrating stuff about commands or command blocks or structure blocks, I have the ability to do that in this world, and I'm not like, I'm not cheating stuff in behind the scenes. I am legitimately wanting to show you guys how some of the finer points of the admin side of Minecraft worlds works. And I really think that they should rename the cheats part of that home screen to commands instead, because that's really what you're using it for. You're using it for commands. It's a set of console commands, and yes, that is how people traditionally input cheats for games like this, but it's not really the same thing. The majority of people use commands for kind of specific stuff related to world admin, and then they use that more than they use it for, say, giving themselves resources and stuff like that. And yeah, I appreciate the terminology is there and is just kind of a recognized thing at this point, but it gets a lot of people suspicious of you being dishonest when you're absolutely not being. How's this looking so far? Yeah, that's looking pretty accurate. Got the roof on, and I need to add some more of the details. I've got my spruce stairs here already. Where are we at in terms of the build process here? Yeah, let's grab the slabs now. And I guess we have to do bits and pieces to the roof next. This was the really tricky part when I was building it in Minecraft Earth, was getting an angle that I could look at the underside of that block to place an inverted stair. Some of the building in that game is actually kind of tricky because it's all based on the player's perspective in the real world, as opposed to here in Minecraft where we have a lot more mobility, I think. Like, I can't jump up 1 meter from a standing start in the real world, whereas I can in Minecraft, which does make things a little bit easier. But then again, there's a lot of stuff I can do in Minecraft that I can't do in real life, like, for example, build a house. So we're not going to worry about that too much. Let's put the roof section in here. Yep, okay, and a couple of blocks there and there, a few fences. I really want to thank everybody who started watching that Minecraft Microbuilds series, by the way. I'm going to try and make it a regular thing. We're potentially going to do it on weekends. It really depends what I have time for, really, because the reason I don't make Survival Guide 7 days a week is because I like to have a little bit of time off to recharge at the weekends, but I do like the idea of putting out occasional tutorial builds, especially as more and more people get access to Minecraft Earth and want to build something in that 8x8 plot area you get by default. But what I really want to do is make sure that this Minecraft Microbuilds series doesn't subtract value from the survival guide, and that's why I think it's kind of cool to incorporate it into the survival guide, so it's actually adding something. We are getting a few extra builds that you guys will all know how to build instead of me having to go through it block by block. In a survival guide video, you'll be able to watch the tutorial for it and find out. So I'll put a few stairs on this side of the wall like so, making that nice dividing line between the wool section and the stone. Start to add the details around the outside here, like the leaves up the side and a fern there. We could even add trapdoors to the side of this because we're not constrained by the 8x8 plot dimension, but I kind of like leaving it open like this. We may as well do that. And one thing I didn't bring with me in the shulker box was the stone brick walls, but that's fine. We had enough stone brick that I was able to craft a few while I was here. We'll put those on top of the oak fences. Yeah, okay, great. One thing I noticed when I was rebuilding this in Minecraft Earth is that fence gates still follow the old physics that they used to have, which is a weird way of putting it, I suppose, but now you can place fence gates basically anywhere in Java Edition Minecraft. It doesn't have to be on top of a block, whereas you used to have to place fence gates basically from the ground upwards because they had to be resting on a block. You could take them away after that and you would still have a suspended one in midair, but pumpkins used to be the same. You only ever used to be able to place a pumpkin on a solid block. It had to have a block underneath it, and that is no longer the case, which is actually a lot more freeing, and there's really no reason for it to be like that in the first place, but that was just a restriction the game put on it unnecessarily. But now we're getting around to adding the finishing touches. We've got the leaves going in, we've got the trapdoors going in around the windows, and this thing really does look quite nice and at home here on the plains. I like it. It's nice and tall and very thin, but it's a decent build to start off a micro build town with. And the reason I didn't want to build this stuff too close to Founder's Forge is that we're ultimately going to get a variety of styles out of this series. There's going to be modern houses and castles and, you know, all sorts of stuff, whatever we can fit in an 8x8 area. So it's not necessarily going to look like a coherent town. It's going to be a complete mishmash of styles. All sorts of stuff about this is going to be very different each time, but that's fine. I like having a little bit of variety, and Minecraft is one of those games where you don't have to stick to a specific build style. You really can freestyle it wherever you go. It's just kind of nice to create a little bit of variety here and there. For the last touch here, we're going to grab a little bit of bone meal and just bone meal the sides there. We could always move some of that grass onto the coarse dirt if we want to. Yep, this is looking really nice. I'm very happy with it. It looks perfect, just sat here in the middle of the plains, and if only it had some other houses around it, right? Well, that's what we're going to do. We're going to have a go at cloning this house using structure blocks, which is going to be, like I said, a bit more of an admin style thing for us to do in the survival guide, but I really think it's going to make this house feel a little bit more at home. Hey folks, welcome back. So this is going to be the structure block portion of the tutorial, and the first thing I'm going to do is dump all of my inventory in a chest because I don't want to lose any of these items by mistake. We're going to go into creative mode for a little bit here, and I have this bad habit when I've been building in creative mode. I get used to it from building in my creative test world, is I do a command that says /clear in the chat after I'm done with some stuff, and that usually just removes all of the blocks and items and armor and anything you're holding in your inventory, as well as clearing your levels as well. So just in case I accidentally type that, I don't want to lose any of the items I normally use in the survival guide. So yeah, I figured I might as well just dump all my stuff in a chest to make sure it's safe and I don't make an accidental keyboard slip up. Now, the first thing we're going to do is type in a command. We're going to do give Pixlriffs and then Minecraft structure block, like that. I'm just tab auto completing that, but you can find that pretty easily, and it will give you one structure block. If you do this, you might want to do it in creative mode. In fact, I can't even place this block without going into creative mode first, so we are actually going to do game mode creative just to make sure we are in creative mode. Perfect, now I can place one down. There we go. Structure blocks have 4 different states, and we're going to be focusing on 3 of them. The 4th one is data, which is the default mode of a structure block, and this is a way of adding some custom data that I'm not going to be using in this video. We're not going to focus too much on that. We are just here to learn how to copy and paste a build like this over and over again a few separate times. So the first thing we want to do is outline where we think the outer edges of this build are and place down some blocks that are going to show us where the corners are. So I think right here is where the corner of this build is. Like, we don't have any blocks that are outside of this line here, and make sure that the inside corner of the structure block, the one that is closest to the build, is on the very outmost boundary of where you expect the build to be, and I'll explain why in a second. We need to make sure that we switch this by clicking this button here to corner mode, and that we give this structure a name. So I'm going to call this 8x8 house, like that. You can't put any spaces in this. If you want to put a space, then you can put in an underscore character if you want to, but we're going to just go with 8x8 house. And in fact, I will use Shift and Home to highlight that, and Control C to copy and paste, so that we can copy paste the structure name multiple times throughout this. We're going to hit done, and you'll notice that the structure block looks different depending on which mode it is in. This is data, that is corner, the save one looks like a full dot, like that, and the load one looks like a dot without the center filled in, like that. Ignore the commands that are popping up in the chat. That's just to do with the fact that those didn't save or load anything. So what we need to do is place another corner block like this on the opposite side of the build here in the other corner, and that's going to be right here, like so. So we'll load up this corner. We will type in 8x8 house and hit done, and you'll notice when you go back in, it will tag it Minecraft 8x8 house. You don't need to worry too much about that. That is the game just tagging it for its own purposes, and you'll notice whenever you give yourself a structure block, so let's do give Pixlriffs structure, you'll see that it automatically tags it with Minecraft to show that it's not part of a mod or anything, and like this is the data structure that Minecraft uses. We won't go too much into that right now, but just so you know, it will append Minecraft to the beginning of your structure name. You don't need to worry too much about that. Now we have basically given it 2 corners, and it's going to draw a square between the inside corners of both of those structure blocks. So if you imagine, you won't need to imagine it in a minute because I'm going to show you, but an 8x8 box is now surrounding the base of this build. Now what we want to do is tell it where a third corner is, because this is of course a 3D build, it's a 3D shape. We want to tell it how high to go with this bounding box, and for that we're going to go all the way up into the air like so. We're going to get to roughly the top of the build here, and we're not actually going to place a structure block here manually. Instead, we're going to do it using a command. I often find it easier to work with this in my creative test world if I want to move stuff around. So we're going to do the set block command, like so. We're going to set it at my position. So we're going to write tilde, 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 like so, which will set the block at the player's current position, or close enough. And we're going to put structure block here, and we're going to hit enter, and now that will appear directly above the block I was standing on, and this high up in the air. So that underneath side of the block is the maximum height of this build as well. So you'll notice that I wanted to place the block a block above the peak of this build, and that's where we're going to leave it. We're going to add that as another corner like so. 8x8 house, tag that as done, and now wherever we want to, we can place another structure block. It doesn't have to be attached to another one, but I just find it convenient to do it this way. And this structure block is going to be the save structure block, and that one is what we're going to enter the structure name in, like so, and we are going to hit detect. And what that will do is render a bounding box around the outside of our build here, and this is how we can check that we have got everything we want to include in the area we are going to copy and paste. So each of these lines around the outside here designates the outer limits of the area that's going to be copied, and it looks like we have an 8x8 square perfectly preserved here. And it's kind of difficult to spot them. You might occasionally see them as we fly around the build, but there are boundary lines that are no lower than the floor. So the top corner of this is actually where it starts measuring the lowest boundary of this bounding box, and so that's not going to copy paste that piece of coarse dirt. We can do something about that though, because if we come back up here to this save structure block and we change the structure size to 20 and hit done, it extends it by 1 block upwards, and then we can change the relative position -20 like so, and that moves the entire thing downwards. So you can actually adjust the X, Y, and Z parameters of this bounding box once you've detected it with the original kind of corner blocks. But now it should now actually extend down 1 block further. Yes, there we go. So it is now also copying the grass blocks and the coarse dirt blocks that we've placed around the outside. So while the corner blocks here are good for placing those initial guidelines, they are not necessarily the absolute boundaries of the bounding box of this area that we're going to save. So with that done, I think what we should be able to do is hit save, and that has now saved this structure as Minecraft 8x8 house, and we can use a load structure block to load it in somewhere else in the world. There is one more option that I have not done here, and that is to include entities. And entities are things like item frames, things like mobs that might be saved with the structure, anything that's on the inside, armor stands, for example, stuff like that. I do not believe it includes flowers. I think flowers are technically counted as blocks, but I guess we're going to find out, because we're about to copy-paste this over to a different area of this plains biome. And this is another reason I wanted a larger plains biome to work with, is just so we could give all of this a little bit of space. So what I'm going to do is come down over, let's say, here, and we're going to place another structure block here. We're going to change that to load. We're going to paste the structure name in there, and we're going to hit load. The first time we do this, it will generate a wireframe, kind of like the wireframe that is around this house here, and it will show us the corner from which it is generating this structure with this green line here, which you'll notice matches the green line at the back corner of this build. And the position of this green line relative to the other lines you'll see around here is an indication of which way the structure is going to be facing. Right now, since the green line is over there in that back corner, and it's oriented like this is the direction which we can expect the house to be facing. When we load this up, it's going to look exactly the same as the house next to it. And there is already a bit of stuff that is in this area. There are grass blocks and there is grass growing from some of the blocks around here. You'll notice that the boundary in here is a couple of blocks down, so it's definitely going to be removing some of the terrain around here. This is something you need to be a little bit careful about when you're placing this. The terrain inside of here is not actually going to be taken over. In fact, all of the air blocks in this build have also been saved as part of the build, and we can avoid that by placing structure void blocks, which are another part of this I will explain in a little bit. But no, if we want to completely replace whatever is in this area with everything inside this build, we should be good to go. And now I can open this up, hit load a second time, and it will load an exact copy of the house. And it does look like the flowers were saved there. That is interesting stuff. Okay, but as it is, we have a perfect copy of the 8x8 house we just saved, loaded up again in the same world. And I'm actually going to destroy this copy for now, because what I want to do is create a rotated version of this build, which is going to be a little bit trickier, but I think we can manage it. Going back into the menu for this structure block, you will see a bunch of these numbers along here, and 90, 180, 270 are all here. Those indicate how this build is going to be rotated when you load it into the world. If I hit 90 and hit done, you will see that the structure block box has rotated around, and it's now actually intersecting with the one next to it, which is not a great thing. That's not what we want to do, because if we generated that now, it would basically graft itself on to the house that is already here and probably erase some of the blocks inside of here, because we have not given it any structure void inside. If we now go to 180 and hit done, you'll notice it is now rotated around 180 degrees from the original. And if I load it into the world here, it is facing the opposite direction, with the door and everything still on the same side. It hasn't been mirrored or anything like that. It is simply the same build in reverse. And by doing something like this, by rotating the build every so often, you could actually generate a town using just a single type of build. And with an asymmetrical build like this, that's actually going to generate a pretty decent, if a little bit visually repetitive, city. You could generate an entire town out of one or two builds like this if you wanted to. Once you're done checking out the bounding box, if you want to remove it completely, you can just remove the structure block, and that will make the bounding box disappear, and you can just take a look at the build in all its glory. Same with this one up here. If we take out all of the structure blocks relating to that, take out the save structure block, we can just fill all of this stuff in and remove the structure blocks from the scene entirely, and now we have two of those houses. But just because we've removed that save structure block doesn't mean that this build is no longer going to be loadable. In fact, we can load it up a couple of times again because it is saved within the files for this world. Let me load one down here a little bit. I'm placing these in the ground to save a little bit of time. Oh dear, 8x8 house. There we go. That should load up nice. There we go, and let's rotate this one around, say, 90 degrees. You can also adjust the relative position if you wanted to, but I'm saving time just by burying the structure block where I want the bottom of the build to be. Hit load, and there it is. Once again, the same build copied over again. And now, using the fill command once again, I am going to remove these extra buildings from the world, because like I said, I don't want to use cheats to spawn stuff in this world. I don't want these structures to really be there thanks to creative mode. If I wanted to build multiple of these structures in my world, I could do it in survival, and that would probably be a little bit more of a legit way of doing it. But there are some survival worlds where people consider this a really useful tool, and one such world is the Realm of Vaston, which is a server run by a guy named Fixit. I've been able to interview him a couple of times on the Spawn Chunks podcast, and they use structure blocks in their survival world to be able to recreate certain structures which they know for a fact that they could just recreate by hand over and over again. But ultimately, with the world they're creating, they're trying to create a kind of fantasy world, and it saves time to be be able to copy and paste the same tree a whole bunch of times in a forest. Once a tree design, a custom tree gets approved, rather than have to rebuild the entire thing painstakingly every single time, they allow themselves to use structure blocks like that to fill in sections of the world which would otherwise be completely empty, and it allows you to work a little bit faster and get back to the fun stuff of building new things and building stuff that is exciting and can't be reproduced just by copying and pasting stuff. But copying and pasting a build in the same world is not the limit of what you can do with structure blocks, because if you go into your Minecraft saves folder here, you'll find that the structure has been saved in this folder here titled Generated. If you go into Generated Minecraft Structures, you will find there that the 8x8 house has been saved as a very small NBT file, and copying and pasting this NBT file into the generated structures folder of another Minecraft world will allow you to reproduce that exact same structure using structure blocks in that world. So if I copy paste this generated folder, go into the save file for my creative test world, it's already got a generated folder in here, but I can just paste that now and it will add the 8x8 house to the other structures that I've already saved in here, which are date back to quite a while ago by now from some stuff I was experimenting with. And now if I relaunch Minecraft and go into my creative test world, if I now give myself a structure block in this creative test world, I go out to a nice open area, we're going to bury this in the ground, set it to load and type 8x8 house, hit load, and you'll see the wireframe pop up, so it recognizes that the 8x8 house is a structure in the folders for this world. If I hit load again, there it is in all its glory, looking wonderful. And I think this can actually be used in a bunch of really interesting ways. If, for example, you want to tear down a build in your survival world and you can't bring yourself to get rid of the build entirely, but you don't want to just preserve it as screenshots, you could use structure blocks to copy that build into a separate world before you tear it down, and that way it will remain preserved for as long as you want it. Likewise, if you wanted to, if you're somebody who wants to do stuff like this in your survival world, you could build some stuff in creative first, copy it over to your survival world, and then like trace it, I suppose. There's not really a way of using this kind of style of house as like a schematic or anything. It will be there in your survival world, but you can use it as a kind of a guide, I suppose, if you wanted to build something legit in survival, but you didn't want to just go back and forth between worlds or take a ton of screenshots or something like that. You could always copy it in, build it from scratch next to it, and then delete it again afterwards. It'd be a weird kind of workaround, I suppose, but I'm trying to think of ways people won't just view this as cheating, so bear with me a little bit. And there are a couple of other really neat things you can do with structure blocks. For example, in the center of the rotation numbers here, you'll notice this button here with a single line on it, and that controls the mirroring of the structure. I've already loaded it up here. I can just load it in the state that it was before, but then I can place another structure block next to it, load up the same thing, we'll do 8x8 house, and we can set the mirroring to mirrored, like so, left to right. What that's going to do is load up the same structure mirrored on the opposite side. So now if I hit load like this, you'll notice it is entirely symmetrical, down to the block. The entire thing has been rendered in perfect symmetry, and it actually looks quite good as two houses next to each other. I could not have called that, but apparently it does. That's very neat. Also, there are a couple of other fun things that we can throw into the mix. For example, now, if I hit 8x8 house, I can look at this structure integrity value down here, and I will change that to 0.5. The default value is 1.0, but we're changing it to 0.5. Hit load, make sure that the area around here is clear, and then when we load it, that will actually load up precisely half of the blocks in the build, and it will randomly remove the other half, or just not load the other half in the first place. And this can be really cool to generate destroyed or ruined structures. If I load it again, you'll notice it loads a completely different randomized set of blocks. So that's probably, yeah, about 2/3 of the build is there, but the rest of it is still not. And you could do that a couple of different times for ruined structures if you wanted to create different scales of ruination. You can imagine using that to create, say, a stone house quite low to the ground, and then apply different levels of ruination to it by changing the structural integrity via a structure block. So all you need to do is type, say, 0.1, and it would only load 10% of the blocks in that structure, and that would allow you to create a few ground level ruins that could look completely unrecognizable from a finished build, adding some variety without the obvious repetition that we saw back in the survival guide world. And now it's time to talk about structure void a little bit, because this is actually a really useful concept if you want to import builds but still have them interact with the terrain that you've already created, or some features that you might want to be inside of this area. And that can be a kind of useful concept if you're importing builds in a certain way. But as I mentioned earlier in the video, if you import a build without any structure void blocks inside of it, everything that's part of the build is imported, including the air blocks that were inside of the bounding box around the structure. So if there was, for example, some terrain up here, like the edge of a mountain or something like that, it would be completely wiped out by the structure getting imported into the world. Here is an example for you. I have here a glass box. This feels like a magic trick or something. I have a glass box that is completely clear on the inside. It's just a glass cube with the 3x3 in the center hollowed out, and I have saved that using this save structure block as glass box. Now watch what happens if I try and import it around this set of diamond ore, like so. I have it loaded up here. If I just hit load, it erases the diamond ore, because the diamond ore is replaced by the air blocks that were saved inside of this cube. Now if I do this command here, give myself some structure void, and it looks like this kind of weird blue steering wheel here, like this, I can place this basically everywhere inside of here. And the difficulty right now is that you can't really see it all that well as a block. It is a little bit mysterious because, like barrier blocks in Minecraft, it is kind of designed to be invisible, but some texture packs might do something about it. I wonder if it's something to do with Optifine that we can't see this right now. But anyway, we should now have an adequate amount of structure void inside this area. That should be every single block in there covered, and I'm going to save the structure again. Now if I save that and I import the glass box again into this one, you'll notice if I load this up, it is exactly the same structure, and no tricks up my sleeve, no trickery has occurred, and I hit load, it's actually loaded the glass box all the way around the outside of that diamond ore and left the diamond ore in there intact. And that is because the structure void was registered inside of there as blocks that weren't technically air blocks, that it is fine for any materials that already existed in that space to be left in the build when it is imported. Just to demonstrate this another way, I'm going to go in here, I'm going to remove some of the structure void blocks that we just placed, and I'm going to save the structure one more time, like so. And now, if we reload it in this space, you should see that a few of those diamonds where I removed the structure void blocks have actually disappeared. A few of them are gone from this little section of diamond ore, and that is because the structure has now replaced those with air blocks, instead of leaving a structure void for the blocks that were already there to inhabit. And I hope this has given you a bit of an idea of how you could use structure blocks creatively in your own worlds. It's not something, like I said, that I plan to do all that much with the survival guide, but people have been asking me to revise a structure block tutorial I made a while ago, so it felt like a good opportunity to do that. And I hope you guys enjoyed the video. We're going to hop back over into the survival guide world and get back into survival mode so we can do our final sign-off. So now, with all of these structure blocks and stuff cleared out of my inventory, I am going to go back into survival mode, where we will be staying for the foreseeable future, and I can grab all of this stuff out of my chest now, knowing that it is safe and sound. But I hope you guys have enjoyed this look at doing stuff with structure blocks. It's something, once again, a little bit different for the series, but some folks have asked me to do stuff about command blocks in this series in the past, and I hope this has whet your appetite for more stuff like that. Don't forget to leave a like on this episode if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you want to see more, and I will see you guys soon. Take care, bye for now.